So I wanted to talk about this. Jeff Bezos is, and this is going viral all over the internet. Jeff Bezos is talking how that rich people, the ultra rich like him, should be paying more in taxes, and the bottom 50% shouldn't be paying taxes. And I've got some thoughts because if this happens in the U.S., this will probably skyrocket or whatever you want to call it, snowball in other places, and should be in Europe, Canada, and so on, right? But I have some thoughts that might not be very sexy sounding. So let's hear this out.
We are here with Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, also, of course, founder of Amazon. It is great to see you. This is remarkable, by the way, just the scale of it. We've been talking about it all morning. But of all the people that we could talk to about everything that's going on in the country right now, in the economy, AI, jobs, space, we want to talk to you.
Why? By the way, why are they in a warehouse? Did he choose this location just to look like he is part of the working? No, he's not. No, Jeff, you're not one of the working class people working in the warehouse. Okay, you don't have to showcase this so you look more relatable. We know.
We're going to touch on that policy, politics, and so much more.
I'm not saying he's evil. It's just
one of the
interesting.
Topics that I thought we should talk about, and maybe even start with, is these days it feels almost impossible to pick up a newspaper without reading a headline about wealth in America, about the billionaire class, about wealth inequality and policy and everything else. And it's taken a uniquely critical turn, I think. And I'm so curious, before we even get into everything else, what you think about that right now.
Okay.
Well, first of all, Andrew, I'm glad you're asking the question. I think it's a really important topic. And I think it's an important one to discuss because I see the same thing you do. You know, you see it in a bunch of headlines, you see it in a bunch of places. And I have been thinking about what is driving this? Because it does seem different from 10 years ago. And
oh my God, come on, get to the point.
I think what's going on is that it's kind of a tale of two economies.
Yeah.
So you have a bunch of people in this country who are doing really well, but you also have a bunch of people in this country who are struggling. So you would pay rent, groceries, and so.
And this is the case in the US, in Canada, in Europe, in all of the Western countries, right? In the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was still a rich, poor middle class, right? But recently, in the last few decades, the working class has been going down, and the people who used to be millionaires or with hundreds of millions now are worth billions or hundreds of billions, right? But the tax system, the progressive tax system, literally makes no sense because for somebody, a 35% tax on their income at the end of the year, that could be life or death. For some people, even 50% taxes would still they would still be able to buy 10 houses, right? It needs to be changed, but there's some caveats.
What's happening here is politicians are using the kind of age-old technique. So there's this tale of two economies.
Yeah, blaming rich
people. They're using this age-old technique of picking a villain and pointing fingers, but the problem is that doesn't solve anything.
Yeah,
and so
a lot of these politicians all over the world, right? I'm mostly speaking about Europe and North America. A lot of these people made their money because of politics. They don't know shit about business. Not that I'm a businessman or a politician. I'm just saying what I'm observing.
You want to help the group of people who are struggling. You have to figure out real root causes and solutions, and that takes skill. It's like the way if we have a problem at Amazon, the way we would fix it is we would go in and we'd do the 5 whys and we'd try to get to a root cause. We'd try to find a root fix, and then when we fix it at the root, you're fixing it forever. It's a real solution. And what we don't do, because it doesn't work, is just point fingers and blame people. It might feel good for 10 seconds, but doesn't accomplish anything. And so what could you really do? So
do you have a plan?
I have some ideas. I have some places to start. So, I started thinking about this and doing some research. A nurse in Queens who makes $75,000 a year.
Yeah.
Pays 12.
And imagine she's gonna pay 1.5K in or 1K in taxes. Are you freaking kidding me? In New York?
More than $12,000 a year in taxes.
Yeah.
Does that really make sense? So people talk about making the tax system more progressive. How about we start by having the nurse in Queens not pay taxes? Why is a nurse in Queens who makes $75,000 a year paying more than $1,000 a month in taxes? That's $1,000 a month that could help with rent or groceries or anything.
Yep.
And so, and by the way, do you know what that all adds up to? The bottom half of income earners in this country pay only 3% of the taxes.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to say. So the bottom 50% of people in the US, this is the case in a lot of countries around the West, right? But in the US specifically, the bottom 50% pay like 3% of the taxes. The top people pay, I don't know, 30, 40, 50% of the taxes, right? And there's everyone else in the middle. And this is the case in the Europe and Canada, right? So I am okay with raising the taxes on the ultra rich in all of these countries, right? Not for 50%, but it can be for like an additional, I'm pretty sure that they'll be fine even if they pay an additional 10%, but it doesn't have to be 10. Even an additional like 2 to 5% would change stuff drastically. You know what I mean? Especially in Canada and Europe, salaries are not as high as the US. And when it comes to stuff like taxes, and especially in Europe and a lot of countries, this stuff is a problem. And I'm specifically mentioning Canada and Europe right now because a lot of this taxpayer money goes to illegal migrants that don't really, not all of them. Some of them are good people, of course. A lot of them don't work, don't really do anything. They just make money and live off of the country, make money, steal money, indirectly or directly. You know what I mean? The US also has this kind of a problem. But I also feel like if he's gonna say we shouldn't be taxing the people that are in the bottom 50%, right? Maybe he has some ulterior motive. Let's listen and then I'll speak.
It's only 3%. We can find 3%.
And why I'm speaking about this and mentioning all of the West, because this can snowball, and if this happens in the US, people all around the West will start talking about this and wanting their countries to implement this, okay? A lot of the stuff that happens in the US politically, not everything, but a lot, also after a few months happens in my country as well.
We don't have,
we are very close with the US.
Government, you know that, and really and the more I thought about it, to me it's kind of absurd that we're doing this. You know, we shouldn't be asking this nurse in Queens to send money to Washington. They should be sending her an apology.
Yeah.
It really makes no sense.
An apology.
Okay, but then on the other end, the question is, should you be paying higher taxes to pay for the 3% component part of this that you think is going to need to be paid for, if not more than that, given the debts we have?
It's certainly a perfectly valid policy debate to say, do we want an even more progressive tax system? So, you know, the line that gets quoted all the time.
I mean, listen, for U.S. standards, if you're making above 10 million a year, come on, man, you'll be fine with an additional 2 to 3% taxes. If you were in other places around the world, you might be even making less and still be okay with, you know, an additional 2 to 3%. Like, come on. This tax stuff hasn't changed for decades, right? Meanwhile, the middle class has changed drastically. Incomes haven't risen that much, and everything has become way more expensive. Come on. You know?
The wealthy should pay their fair share. Right. And we can argue about what the fair share is. That's a policy debate. That's okay. But the vilification is the thing that's just the distraction. And by the way, if you really are being honest about it, we don't have a revenue problem in this country. We already have the most progressive tax system in the world. Managing
the top money.
1% of taxpayers pay 40% of all the tax revenue.
40%.
Only 3%. We have already, and I think it should be 0. I don't think it should be 3%. I think it should be 0. So we'd be making it more progressive that way. We actually have a spending problem, and that's a skills issue. Let me give you an example.
It's a money management problem.
School system. Right. They spend $44,000 per student.
Listen, New York City has way more problems than just spending how much money per student. Okay, that got Mamdani legalized stealing and shit, and he's lost a lot of huge corporations and a lot of the middle class. They've got way more problems.
44,000. That's 30% more per student than other big cities like Chicago, LA, and Boston, and it's 3 times more than Miami and Houston. And by the way, New York City doesn't get better outcomes. So listen, let me just say, if we ran Amazon the way New York City runs their school system, your packages would take 6 weeks to arrive. We'd have to charge you a $100 delivery.
Okay, so we get what he means. So what was my main point? I want to make this fast, right? My main point is, he is right. And this is the case in a lot of countries around the West. So the top % of people, the richest people like him, he's worth like what, 3, 4, 200 billion, right? those people are paying 40% of the taxes, and the bottom 50% of people are paying 3% of the taxes. So if we just up the taxes for these guys for like 3%, there we go, or maybe 5%, even better, right? The problem is with these, and I'm not saying all of these people are evil. A lot of them are. I am very sus of these kinds of most rich, powerful people in the world, right? A lot of Epstein class and all of this, right? Not saying anything about Bezos specifically. Don't know shit. I don't know shit about him. But when a person in this position that only cares about making more profit and just making the company as like the biggest one in their industry and destroying all their competitors, when somebody like this says this stuff, and again, I'm not a political expert, I'm not a financial expert. I talk with people that are experienced in a lot of businesses and that are maybe in politics or law, right? I talk with people from the US as I have friends, and I watch a lot of this. The interesting part, I saw a lot of left and right-leaning people talk about this. They all agreed to this, but I didn't see anyone say this. What's the ulterior motive? You've heard the saying that if you're not paying for a product, that means you're the product. So you're not paying taxes. Let's say the bottom 50% of people in the US or Europe, Canada, and so on. Imagine this is implemented all over the West, right? Or all over the world. Well, you're not paying taxes, but you're getting all of the benefits as a taxpayer as you would be getting, right? Well, somehow that means you're the product. And you know how I imagine this? Because this is how nihilistic and like negative I am, and I'm very sorry, and I hope I'm proven wrong. But let's say a few years pass and a few months pass, and people are loving this, that are the bottom 50%, right? And that are not paying the taxes because the taxes for the richest people have been risen for a few percentage points, right? Eventually, they will start adding more rules, more laws, or stuff that you can do less or you're not able to do as somebody who's not paying taxes. What I'm saying is they will start regulating you more, controlling you more. This is what I'm saying, okay? I don't want to be a negative guy. I want to be proven wrong on this, okay? But if this happens in my country, in the US, whatever, I would immediately start saying, fuck, what is going to happen to this class of people, right? I will start thinking, okay, so there's, in the near future, very near future, something might happen where if we would want to keep being that 50% class who's not going to be paying taxes, which is great for us financially, right, for these kinds of people, we would start accepting and keeping quiet about more and more laws and regulations that only apply to us because we might have less freedom. I'm not in those kinds of people. If I was in the US, I would be, right? But in my country. But let's say you are in those kinds of people, right? You'll have to accept it or get richer and get in the upper 50%. It's still gonna be evil, you know. I don't know what to think. That's what I find suspicious. I just see this as a tactic to somehow regulate and control more people that are in that bottom half. Still somehow find ways to exploit them, right? And but yeah, I do agree that the tax system maybe can be made a little bit more progressive because you know the middle class is dying out. There's more and more poor people, and the richer are only getting richer. And the world is being very divided. And that's the biggest division, by the way. It's in these Western countries. It's not about... There's divisions between like racism and ethnicity problems and gender stuff. The biggest division is this. Classism. The money stuff, right? So, yeah, tell me what you guys think in the comments. Interesting stuff. I'm not a politician or an expert in any way. But this is just what I feel and think. And I felt that I wanted to mention. Tell me what you guys think and have a nice day.